Good evening and welcome to Driver's Ed, our last class of the week. We're almost through the beginning portion of learning about licensing and titling and registration and getting ready to drive in the highway transportation system. So we're going to try to wrap things up, get back on track. I know I'm a little bit behind from where I want to be. So we'll try to make up for time tonight. Now, some of you still have some outstanding homework that you have not sent in that I asked for. Last night we talked about going to Google Earth and finding an intersection or someplace that you've been a passenger or a driver that's a little bit unsafe. Explain what makes it unsafe and what they could do to make it a little bit better, a little bit easier to maneuver. Because we're going to take a look at some of the roadways in the structure of roadways and how the engineers come up with placing guardrails and what makes things safe and unsafe on the roadway. So we're going to wait for, we had enough people and then we lost a couple. So we're going to wait for people. Remember to sign in on your phone. Remember to sign in on YouTube so I can see who's here. I had 18 people looking at one point. Now we're down, so hopefully it's streaming okay. So we'll wait a few minutes for people to log back on. It's very important that you maybe put it in your calendar. I know that if you have subscribed, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, meaning that everybody that's on right now has already done this, so the people I should be talking to or haven't logged in yet, is what you should do is subscribe to this YouTube channel. And I believe that it will give you a alert that there's going to be a new live class coming up. So please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to Peace, Love, and Safe Driving. We've got just about a full class, which is good. I'm going to put up some drive time, so I'm going to just do this for a little bit. So tomorrow is basically booked up except for the morning. If anybody, and actually I think I'll do this right now. I didn't do it the first night of class. When I was driving with some of you the past couple days, I've been asking you about free periods and when your availability to drive is. So let me get out of here, out of the music. There we go. What I would like you to do is to text me right now, is that if you have a free study that you're able to drive, so Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday, I know that on 2 of the days you're in school, the other 2 days you're remote, but it's still good for me to know that you have that time available. If you're the only one that has something, let's say tomorrow morning, I could probably come get you if you can't get to school. So it's really important that I can access you as often as I can, because as you can see, Monday and Tuesday, if everybody's fighting for those 6 hours, it's going to be really rough to get everybody their 10 hours in. And it doesn't have to be at the end of the program, but when your program ends, then there's more kids joining the next session. So it just gets to be a cycle. So now is the time to sign up and make time available. So if you've got time between 8 and 3 that I can come and get you and drive with you, then that's going to be helpful. So please text that to me so I can take a look at that a little bit later tonight and I can put it in your notes. At the very end of class at 9 o'clock, I'm going to put these times back up, and I would like you to specifically let me know what works for you. And it's good if you give me like 3 or 4 options. I could do Saturday from 8 to 11. I could do Monday at 4 or 5. I could do Tuesday at 4 or 5, and give me some options so we can kind of start signing you up. I believe there are a few of you that still have to make a payment So that is important that you make sure that you bring a check next time that you drive. Um, Make sure you do your homework. I did not post questions from Highway Transportation System on the remote Facebook page. I will do that at the end of tonight's class. So there'll be some questions for you to answer. Um, Let me just kind of get out of here for a second. Hold on. I'm kind of getting everything back here in order. So yesterday let's just kind of review that your license exam is 3 parts: I, written, road. Once you complete driver's ed, you send in your certificate or you make an application online. You have the green certificate that I provide to you. You cannot get your license before your birthday. Your birthday is the earliest you can go for a test. But even though we're going to be finished, I know some of you have birthdays late May and in June, you can still sign up for a driving test, which is in your favor to get your 10 hours with me done quickly and to start really doing some heavy duty driving with your parents to get your 40 hours in. So you're in the best shape. The rest of you that are already 16, you want to be absolutely done with 40 hours in this class on May 6th. That way you can get tested on May 7th, 8th, whatever they can squeeze you in with. All right. We talked a little bit about what the road test is going to entail, how they take you out. You're going to have 100 points. They're going to deduct up to 20. If they deduct 21, the test is over. The written test is 40 questions. You have to pass with an 80, which means 32. You can skip questions. 10 will be with signs. We talked a little bit about registration, that every car has to be registered every year. The person that owns the vehicle registers the vehicle. A title is made out at the town or city clerk. It shows ownership of a vehicle. We use the title registration also for recalls. And we're going to talk about a little bit about what the VIN number is and where it's located tonight. So we're going to be talking about the vehicle and its equipment and systems. Chapter 4 and 5 was part of your homework. Some of you started to do those questions. Just have them in by tonight, or really because it's the end of the week. Just get them into me by this weekend so I can take a look at them, and then we'll be all caught up. We're going to actually have some worksheets to do dealing with warning lights that are on a vehicle. So we'll have some in-class activity that we normally don't have. But let's kind of pick up where we talked about with the HTS. Well, we knew from last night's discussion that cars have been around for a little over 100 years. The technology is getting to where things are going to be automatic, where the car is going to tell you whether you're drifting. It's going to tell you whether you're following too closely. It can maintain speed. We have cruise control right now, but we're getting towards self-automated vehicles. But there'll always be a point where you're going to have to drive a car. You're going to have to steer, accelerate, and brake. We talked about the 3 components of the HTS. We talked about people, how physical and mental capabilities change as people get older, why it's so important to know about young children that are near and close to the road. Be aware of people that are older that may not have physical capabilities to control a vehicle, to see you when you're driving. So look when you're driving and understand what people's capabilities are. We talked about skateboards and rollerbladers and bicycles are considered a vehicle. They have to be on the same road, same side of the road as a vehicle. Anything with wheels, anything that is walking or jogging is facing traffic. And it's really important. So make sure you have this in your notes. A couple of people that drove today had to do this. You need to give people that are running, walking, biking, at least 3 to 4 feet distance when you go around them. So that means you're going over the yellow line. You have to know, when is it safe for me to travel over the center line to get by what is on my side of the roadway. So that is basically what we talked about last night. This was the last slide that we looked at. The thing that I want you to remember here is laws are constantly changing, and we talked about that last night. I talked about a law that I just found out about. I haven't been able to get the answer yet, so I'm not going to really discuss it too much, but it does have to do with a red light. So there has been a change with a red light usage, and I'm going to try to get some clarification before I pass it on to you. But that's the thing. You don't know when laws change unless someone tells you, you read about it, you hear about it on the radio or the news, and in my case, it was through a conference. I'm not going to really stress statistics that much in driver's ed. I'm more um, I'm more concerned that you basically understand a principle and how that applies to you. And the principle here that I want you to write down is that driving is probably a lot more dangerous than you really know. Now, we know cars are involved in crashes. We know people are struck and injured and die in car crashes. But I don't think we really truly understand the magnitude of what's happening. I think, when things are depressing, we don't like to dwell on them, and I kind of get that part. But what I want you to understand by some of these statistics here is that when you look at all the numbers after they're compiled year after year, there's still a lot of bad driving going on. There's still a lot of people that should not have been injured, should not have died in a car. I mean, that's a really unfortunate way to lose your life. Because when you think about driving, you think about going to school, going to work, doing fun things in a car. No one ever thinks that could be the place where, my life changes forever. But it does happen for a lot of people. So I'm going to go through these statistics. You really don't have to write them down, but I want you to think about it. The first one is probably the most important for you to understand, that the likelihood of being involved in a crash is about 1 in 9. If we've got 23 people in driver's ed, so basically what they're saying, if we were to come back in a year and a half, at least 2 of you, at least 2 of you will be involved in a crash. Everybody's probably looking at the list of people on the comments and thinking, I wonder who it's going to be. In a given year, the second bullet, chance of suffering a disabling injury is about 1 in 83. So disabling, I think we think of being long-term, but I think in this statistic they're talking about disabling injury, which means that you have to go to rehab and basically get brought back to a state where you're functioning like you were before the crash. I don't think it's talking about being in a wheelchair or you're going to have a limp for the rest of your life. Motor vehicle crashes kill about 38% of all people between the ages of 15 and 20. It is, or at least it was, I don't think it is anymore, the leading cause of death for people that are younger than 24. And more than 57% of all fatal crashes involve one vehicle. Now, this I do want you to write down, okay? And it doesn't have to be the 50%. But I want you to realize that most people, so more than half of the people involved in their first crash, it's their last crash, which means it's a single vehicle, which means they did something wrong. This is telling me that people are taking too many risks, driving too fast, cutting out in front of people, passing when they shouldn't, and they're not wearing their seat belts, or they're not operating vehicles that have good crash ratings. So they're putting themselves in a bad situation. So when it does really go south and it really does, something bad happens to them, they don't get to live to tell the story. And that's pretty depressing. Okay, let's talk about roads. When we talk, and this was why I wanted you to do the Google Earth homework here, is that when we talk about cars have been around for a little over 100 years. Think about a lot of the roads that we travel on were basically developed probably in the 40s and 50s, and there weren't as many cars back then as there are now. So the angle of the roadway, the width of the roadway, where they have intersections weren't really planned out. It was just something that they came up with that they thought was fine for the times, but they weren't able to change. And most towns don't change to make roads safer unless they absolutely are forced to, excuse me, change an intersection, the lane width and the traffic lights and stuff like that. It's very hard for towns to actually do something to that magnitude now. But it is needed. What I do want you to write down, what we've found, and this is what I want you to focus on. Anytime you have an intersection, there's a danger of a crash. That is where you're going to have your points of conflict. That is where you're going to have your biggest challenge as a driver, is interacting with people that are crossing your path. Now, can you have a crash on a straight roadway? Absolutely. You could have a blowout. Someone could be distracted. Like the heavy winds. I mean, trees were coming down on top of roadways. Could you be driving on that road when the tree comes down? Absolutely. But if we take a look at statistics, most of the time it's at intersections. Most of your challenges will be when you don't have good sight lines at your intersections. This is why I want you to find different places on Google Earth so you have a sense of, this is not a perfect driving environment that I'm going to be driving in. So I've got to be at the top of my game when I'm driving. Now, I want you to write down in your notes guardrails, trees, power lines, or telephone poles will all be obstacles that you're going to have to contend with on the right side of the road. Most of the time when we're traveling, we're staying between the yellow line and the white line. Every once in a while, we're going to have to go over the white line, or we're going to be forced over the white line, and there's going to be a chance that there are going to be obstacles like guardrails, telephone poles, and trees that are going, or bridges that will impact our car, which will cause a collision or an accident. So anything that we can do, or the town can do, to clear off trees, to clear off or move telephone poles well off to the side of the road, will make the roads a little bit safer. So I want to show you a clip. This was done probably about 15, 20 years ago by the National Transportation Company, Insurance Agency, and they talked about making roads a little bit safer. So I wanted to show you this.
Site of a fatal accident.
This tree is going to be struck again and again and again. This pole has obvious signs of vehicle impact.
We're at the location of a serious accident.
The driver lost control of the vehicle.
Mother and two small children.
Wrapped around this utility pole.
Left-hand guardrail that will steer a car.
Outdated as of 25 years ago.
Ridge columns right along the edge of the roadway on both sides.
Highway safety ought to be a priority.
The tendency is to put back what was there.
As a highway engineer, you should do anything you can to reduce the severity of an accident.
This location may seem harmless to drivers that use it every day, when in fact it can be deadly and is loaded with roadside hazards. For example, the large tree located just inches off the edge of the pavement. The utility pole on the outside of the curve. Moving down the road a bit, an unprotected guardrail end, which when struck can be deadly and penetrate into vehicles that lose control and come into contact with it. And over here is another large tree located just about 1.5 feet off the edge of the pavement, and in fact was the site of a fatal crash just last year.
Each year in the United States, we have a large number of deaths and serious injuries resulting from single vehicle crashes into roadside obstacles or roadside hazards. This has been a problem that's been with us for a long time, and it continues to be one of the leading causes of death and serious injury in this country.
Before about 1965, or around that period of time, the highway engineering profession's primary mission was to make a safe roadway. There was also the feeling that once you got off that roadway, you're on your own. It's up to you to get out of the perilous situation. It's their job to provide a good roadway and your job to stay on it. About in the late 60s, the philosophy changed to, if a vehicle goes off the roadway, as a highway engineer, you should do anything you can possible to either get them back on the roadway or reduce the severity of an accident.
We learned a lot in the early days of the interstate system, how to make these roadside features less hazardous. And so today, the modern interstate system exemplifies the designs that eliminate most serious roadside hazards. And since we've built many miles of interstate system in the United States, the problem has shifted somewhat. But we still have a very serious problem on the many miles of secondary road that are still out there.
The most dangerous roads we have now are our rural secondary roads. They have the highest fatality rates. There's where you have very little opportunity to recover if you run off the road.
Almost half of all serious roadside hazard crashes occur on curves. Curves to the left are especially hazardous. Signs and pavement markings can help guide drivers around curves, but even where curves are well delineated, drivers can still lose control. And putting signs on roadside hazards isn't the answer. We need to do a lot more than that.
One of the major fixed objects along our roadsides, and the one that accounts for probably more fatalities than any other single fixed object, are trees.
This is an example of the most common problem in the area of roadside hazards, which is trees near the edge of the pavement, especially on curves. On this curve, there are trees right up against the edge of the pavement, and compounding the problem here is a complete lack of protection against drivers striking the trees. The trees are directly in line with any vehicle that loses control around that curve. After trees, utility poles are the most frequently struck object in fatal roadside hazard crashes. Every year in the United States, over 1,000 people die in crashes with utility poles. On this pole, you can see the marking and the scarring that's obvious. This pole has been hit many times and is located in a way that will guarantee it will be hit again in the future if it stays here. The way to deal with this problem is also obvious. Utility poles can be set much further back away from the road, creating a clear zone. Utility lines can be buried underground, eliminating the use of poles altogether. And the use of breakaway utility poles is an option. It's appropriate to remove isolated trees that are located in dangerous locations. However, trees and poles are often located in groups, and when this is the case, it's often more appropriate to shield those objects through the use of a safety barrier.
Guardrails are the most widely used type of safety barrier, but they're not used often enough to keep cars away from trees and poles. They're very effective, but if guardrails aren't installed properly, they can become hazards in their own right. One problem can be that while they're keeping cars away from one obstacle, they can direct them right into another.
This guardrail has been placed in such a way that while it provides adequate protection in some areas, it actually leads vehicles directly into the base of a very large tree, which is very dangerous. The way to correct the situation is to extend the guardrail past all objects on the side of the road and only end or terminate once there's a safe place to do so.
We have here a guardrail that's supposed to be protecting you against the bridge rail, but in actuality it runs you right into the bridge rail if you hit the guardrail. And as we can see, that bridge rail has been hit many, many times. The proper design is to have the guardrail out in front of this bridge rail and attached to it such that you have a smooth transition from one to the other.
Another problem is the end of the guardrail itself, which can become a hazard if it isn't installed properly.
We're at the location of a serious accident with a mother and two small children that went off the left side of the roadway and hit this guardrail. This end treatment, which is like a knife edge, will impale a car, and that's what happened in this accident. The car hit the end of the guardrail, and it actually went up through the firewall into the passenger compartment of this car between two small children. This kind of guardrail is outdated as of 25 years ago, but still there's a lot of these around the country, thousands and thousands of them. Most modern guardrails have a type of end treatment that prevents the impalement of a car.
Burying the end of a guardrail can prevent impalement, but it's not the best answer because it can create a different hazard.
The solution to this problem is to make the post breakaway and make it essentially an energy attenuator.
This is one of the worst examples of roadside hazards that we've seen. Bridge piers like this one are often located very close to the edge of the pavement. They're especially deadly because of their large size and unyielding nature. At this site, a 36-year-old father of two small children died when his car veered off the road and struck an exposed bridge pier. We don't have to wait for somebody to die at a site like this to improve it. What we had at the site before was an exposed bridge pier that was extremely dangerous. Any vehicle running off the road coming into contact with that area of the bridge could result in devastating injuries. In place now is a properly designed guardrail that's attached to the exterior of the bridge pier. Along with that guardrail is a proper and safe end treatment that allows for a gradual deceleration of vehicles that run off the road.
Where bridge supports and other rigid structures can't be safely separated from traffic with guardrails, an alternative is energy-absorbing devices. Crash cushions and other devices can do an effective job of slowing vehicles down gradually. These concepts are simple. Wherever possible, provide a clear roadside that allows drivers a chance to regain control if they leave the road. If a clear zone isn't possible, make sure posts are designed to break away in a crash. And any remaining hazards should be separated from traffic by properly installed guardrails or other energy-absorbing barriers.
We at the federal level ran a highway safety improvement program. Under that program, we provided funds to the states to improve high accident locations. That turned out to be a very effective program.
Fixing roadside hazards is important because it can prevent a momentary loss of control or a minor crash from becoming serious or life-threatening. Engineering safer roads must become an even more important part of the national strategy to reduce deaths and injuries, now that speed limits and travel speeds have increased.
There are funds available for renovating and improving highways. It's very important that some of those funds be allocated to fixing the roadside hazard problem. Obviously, we can't fix them all at once. Therefore, it's very important for highway departments to have sensible priority schemes so that they can decide which ones they should fix first.
Roads are built by civil engineers, and civil engineers are civil servants, and they tend to do what the public wants. The only way you can get the state and local government to enhance safety on the roadway systems is for the public to want that enhanced safety. And I think they do.
Next time you're out on a country road, take a closer look. If you see hazards that shouldn't be there, especially on curves where loss of control is most common, ask yourself why. The answer is that for too long, solving this problem hasn't been a high enough priority. Raise the priority and help make safer roads.
Okay, a couple things from the video that I want you to write down. Hopefully you're never going to go down a back road anymore and not think that it's going to be entirely safe, because as this is trying to prove to you, is leaving the roadway is dangerous, especially with how close some of these obstacles are. Now, they showed you the sharp turn sign. Now, I want you to write this down. It's called a chevron. All right, a chevron. So let me, I'll, if I can get my cursor over here, let me write it so you have it. There you go, chevron. I don't have a capital H there, but that's a chevron. A chevron sign, the thicker the black arrow, the sharper the turn in some states. Now, in New Hampshire, what they do is they keep the arrow the same width, but they put up multiple chevron signs. So a chevron sign is that yellow sign with that black arrow. If you're making a left-hand turn and you see the chevron signs, if you're going too fast, you're going to go into the trees, just like you saw in the video. If you see a chevron signs and the arrow is pointing to the right, you take the turn too quickly, you're going over the center line, you're going into oncoming traffic with traffic you may not know is there. I would rather be going too fast and making a left-hand turn and taking my chances with bushes and trees than hitting somebody head-on making a right-hand turn. Okay, you never have to explain things to a tree why you hit it, but you will have to explain to people why you were going too fast and crossed into their lane. So chevron signs are very important to understand, and we have them all around because we have very windy, curvy roads. And most of the guardrails, too, that we see now being utilized are those attenuators where it's absorbing a lot of the impact. I think I've taken probably the majority of you out towards Lee, and we pass a section where someone has hit the guardrails. I haven't pointed it out to anybody yet, so I'm sure nobody remembers it. But it's just before we get to Wadley Falls Road. And it's not built correctly, so hopefully when they replace it, they're going to put a new one up. Now, when it comes to making roads safer, sometimes towns or countries, in this case, countries, go a little bit to the extreme. So we think more lanes will be safer because we're getting more traffic in, so everybody can pick a lane that's good for them. I actually counted in this picture, there are 20 lanes of traffic. This is the widest road I have ever seen in my life. They thought everybody was going to be moving to, I believe it's pronounced Myanmar. And I guess they're having a revolution right now in this country. But it is so deserted right now in this particular area of the country that pedestrians are crossing the roadways. And that's fences on either side. But if you take a look at the picture over on the left-hand side, people are actually walking across the road. And this is like an interstate. And I don't think of anybody that would think going towards Hampton and Boston that it would be safe for you to cross the roadway with the speed of the cars and the different lanes. But I thought this was kind of interesting. Here's a picture that I took of a very unsafe roadway. This has actually now been taken down because enough people complained about it. But doesn't it make you wonder, why would any type of road engineer or anybody for the telephone company or power company, don't you think someone should have said, I really don't think we should put a telephone pole 1.5 feet off the edge of the road? Because at night, who is going to see that? And notice they put one little tiny reflector about 4 or 5 feet up the top. I would have that thing covered in a reflector so you would see it at night. This is it from a different vantage point, I believe. Look at that. And if you take a look off to the right, see that support wire? It's in the middle of a crosswalk. How many of you, when you were younger, you could put this in the comments. So here's a question that I want to see people answer that I know that you're still here. How many of you, when you were younger, rode your bicycle on a sidewalk? What do you think would have happened if you were riding your bicycle on the sidewalk and you put your head down for a moment? You're not going to see that wire. It's so thin, it's just going to get camouflaged with the environment, and you're gonna, get, taken right off your bicycle seat. Not very safe. So what they have done is they've taken the telephone pole down and they've stretched the wires and they put the telephone pole over there on the green grass. So it is now a much safer place. I do want you to write down this definition of risk. We're going to do a whole section on insurance, I think the last week of class maybe. But insurance is based on risk. You buy insurance because if anything happens to you, someone hits you or you hit somebody, we just talked about the chances, they're, greater than what we think. But if it does happen, then we're going to be covered. So risk is the chance of injury to yourself or others and the chance of damage to your vehicle or property. So when something bad happens to you, if you have insurance, we will make things right. We'll, repair your vehicle. We'll take care of the other person. And risk is always there. And the problem that I find with a lot of people new at driving, you are so scared of other cars that you really sense the risk that something bad's going to happen. I see a lot of people rode their bikes on sidewalks, so you can see where something bad could happen. So you can see that not everybody is thinking safety when it comes to developing roadways. Look at all the people that rode their bikes on sidewalks. Wow. Hopefully you're not doing that anymore after last night's class. Remember, bicycles have wheels, and you're supposed to be going in the same direction as cars. We saw dangerous and vulnerable. Okay, once you write down these skills right here, this is what we're going to try to implement into our 10 hours of driving with me. First one is not your responsibility. It is my responsibility. Keeping the vehicle in top condition. And by the way, for whatever reason, the engine light in the driver's ed car went off today. I did not bring the car in to get it repaired. It must have been an act of God. He just knew that I needed to drive with you guys, and he just healed my car because the check engine light is off. It doesn't mean that it won't come back on, but at least hopefully for the next couple days, we'll get some more driving in. So make sure your car is in good driving condition. Last Saturday, I knew your class was starting soon. I went and had an oil changed. We have a tanked or a topped off oil tank now that we have new oil in the driver's ed vehicle, which I believe does help make the car run a little bit smoother. I always find that my car runs a lot better right after an oil change because oil does break down and it does affect the way that your car rides. Second thing I want you to write down, anticipate the actions of other roadway users. Part of what we do when we drive is looking for what other people are doing. So I may ask you, do you think the pedestrian is going to cross? Is the car going to pull out? What should we do? What should they do? So I am looking to see how your mind works, how you process things, whether you're seeing things correctly, and whether you're making good decisions. I noticed today I made a couple people make turns where they thought I was going to make them wait. So a lot of times I'm going to challenge you or push you in making decisions that should be made just so we don't hold up traffic. But for the most part, if you don't feel comfortable, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of leeway to start off with. Protect yourself and other roadway users. Tuesday's class will be focusing a lot on safety equipment, so we'll talk about that. Drive only when you're in sound physical and mental condition, and make a conscious effort to develop your driving skills all the time. Every time you drive with your parents, you should think about what could I have done differently today when I drove? Could I worked on my position a little bit better? Could I kept a better speed? Maybe I should check my mirrors more. Don't just look at driving as going to school, going to baseball practice, and I know that's your goal. That's where you want to go. But break down everything that you're doing. Break down your driving into particular skills. Break it down into position. Break it down into speed, into braking, into checks. How smooth you are. You're trying to get better. It's just not, remember, it's not one and done. the more we do something, remember, I like that adage, we practice something till we don't get it wrong. We don't practice it just till we get it right. It's till we don't get it wrong. Some of the foundations for effective driving is always looking and understanding what's happening, and that's what giving meaning is. Understanding what your options and choices are when you drive, and basically just what we've been talking about the last couple minutes. Mastering your driving skills is to be perfect all the time. And just because, you know, I focus on one skill each drive time doesn't mean that we're not going to go back and review it. And we'll try to do that near the end of our 10 hours, because it's important for you to understand it's, you know, we haven't parallel parked for 2 weeks. Let's see if you still remember what I taught you, what you were able to do a couple weeks ago. So we're going to always go back and try to review. I do want you to write this down: visibility, time, and space. This was something that came through a AAA program that I used to teach. I don't use it that much, but I do like this little segment that they had in their program. Always think about driving in these 3 categories: how well you can see in front, because remember, you have 4 sides to a car. You have the front, the back, left, and right. If you're only focusing all your attention to the front, something at some point in your driving career will get you from the left or right or from behind. It will happen. It's not, if, it's when. So the more you use your side mirrors, rear view mirror, understanding that you have 4 sides of your car and you're constantly checking it, will make you a better driver. Second thing, time. The ability to judge your speed and speed of others. This is difficult because the only way that you get this is we're talking about time, and really the only way you get it is putting the time in and practice in. So I guess that's the way I have to explain it, is that the way that you look at things now will not be the way that you look at things a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. There's going to be a progression of getting better, being more effective, but we've got to start that process now. So you're going to see a big, huge jump. There really is a huge jump from when you start to learn to drive, from the time that your parents worked with you or when you start driving with me till you get to your 10th, 15th, 20th hour is huge. What you're able to comprehend and learn is immense, but doesn't mean that you have arrived, that you're perfect. So we're always going to be thinking about how can we, and this is the big part, is judging other cars. That's where I find the breakdown with a lot of people. Didn't see the car, didn't judge its speed, and you made a hastily decision to pull out or to pass a person or to make a lane change. That's where you're going to see, not crashes, but mistakes. Most people can recover from mistakes. Crashes really is a total breakdown on everybody's part. Space, the distance around you and your vehicle. A smart driver keeps a margin of space between the vehicle. Think of your car being encompassed by a bubble. Think of about a 10-foot area that goes around your vehicle. Think about 10 feet, okay? 10 feet to the left, 10 feet to the front, then it goes 10 feet over to the right, circles around 10 feet behind you. So you're encompassed in this big 10-foot, area around your vehicle. Anytime someone starts to creep into that area, there should be a red light flashing in your head going, okay, that's not good. Danger, danger, danger. And you need to pick up your speed, slow down your speed, change your position so you always have that space, that cushion. Anytime things get too close to your car, you're so close for it all breaking down, especially when it comes to parking. Parking, you're not dealing with 10 feet anymore. You're dealing with like a foot and a half, 2 feet sometimes with cars. I'm not going to go through this because I want to get right into tonight. All right, let's get into tonight. Let's talk about getting ready to drive. So when you come out to meet me for the first time to drive, we're going to be talking about what are the steps needed to get the car out on the road and to be safe behind the wheel of a car. So the first thing, and we're going to assume now that you actually have a license, okay? because right now you don't know where you're going to go when you drive with me. I have a route already pre-planned, depending on what your experience is, your first time out. I have 3 routes that I use consistently. And depending on what you have for experience, I'm going to slot you into a particular route so we can focus on a particular driving skill. But let's say you have your license. If someone said, okay, could you do me a favor and pick me up a package that I have at Somersworth? It's at the post office. Could you help me out? You got your license, and they're going to even pay you for it. You go, yeah, sure, I'll do it for you. You're going to pay me $20? Yeah. Okay. I'll go to Somersworth and pick it up for you. Then all of a sudden you're thinking, wait a minute here. I really don't know where Somersworth is. I've heard of it. I know it's somewhere close by. I know it's near Dover or something, but I really don't know how to get there. Now, because of GPS, we probably just plug it in. If we don't have GPS in our car, we have GPS on our phone. Now, when your parents were getting their license, ask your parents this tonight. This is a good question. Ask your parents how many times they got lost once they got their license. Because when your parents were learning to drive, it was maps. It was a paper map. Now, they may think they knew the area that they were living in, but I'm sure your parents at some point in their driving, first year of driving, they'll tell you they totally got lost going someplace because they didn't have that. So what I want you to understand is that maybe you already know this. Did you know that every single state route or interstate route deals with a particular direction? Like Interstate 95 that goes from Portsmouth to Boston goes north-south. And the reason why we know that is because it's an odd number. So odd number interstates go north-south. Even number interstates go east-west. When you have a 3-digit, and I'm going to use, because we have a map up here right now, 202. 2 is an even number. So you have a 3-digit state route. An even first number goes into a city or around, so it gives you 2 options. If it's an odd number, and we have 2 odd numbers in Durham, we have 155 and we have 108. Both of those go into cities. That's the only option. Okay, so odd number goes in, even number in the state goes in, or it could go around. It does both. It usually breaks away. You probably heard of 202A. Sometimes you'll see around here we have 155A. So there are what we call spur roads. So make sure you know where you're going. Second thing, make sure you're in good physical, mental health. I'm just going to leave it at that. Some days we feel great. Some days we feel like crap. And guess what? When you get in the car, that's what you're going to feel like. All of a sudden, you don't get much better. If you got a head cold in school, when you get out in your car, you have a head cold. And your balance may be a little bit off. You may be a little bit tired. It's going to affect the way that you drive. Weather plays a huge factor in what you do behind the wheel of a car. Most of the time, it's going slower and increasing your following distance. So here are the big four. Rain, fog, snow, darkness. And I probably should have put, because today on the way home, it started to sleet a little bit. So sleet, and when I talk about weather, I'm talking about what is in the air. Ice is just if it rains and it freezes overnight, we've got ice on the ground. I don't consider that weather. Sleet I do, so I should have probably put sleet up there too. Traffic conditions play a big factor in your driving. You're not going to get to where you want to go if it's very congested. This is why they tell you to get to the airport so early, just in case there's a breakdown on the interstate or in the tunnel or on the bridge. Let's just make it close to home. How many of you seen what it looks like out in front of the school, before school and after school? It's mayhem. It's craziness. Okay, people backing out of parking spots. They're all in a line. Sometimes you hear a beep. People are impatient. It's pretty nerve-wracking. So early morning, late afternoon, when people are going to work, coming home, and holidays, all these traffic conditions play a factor in you getting to where you want to go. There's the beast. There's the driver's ed car. If you haven't driven it yet, that is what you're going to be driving. And what I want you to write down in your notes is if a car has been left unattended for a period of time, you should always approach the vehicle and look around it on both sides and possibly behind it. What would you be looking for? So now I want you to take some good notes. Okay, so for the next like 25 minutes, we're going to take some good notes here. Tires, making sure that they're properly inflated. Now, most of you don't know what a tire should look like. We can check the tire pressure inside the vehicle once we start driving. And I was going to bring it in for tonight's class, and I don't think I have one here in class. Let me hold on a second. Found one. Let me get out of here for a second. Everybody should have one of these in your car. This is a tire pressure gauge. And what you do is you put this onto the stem of your tire. And I know it's not very light in here, but it's going to give you a reading. It gives you a reading of what your tire pressure is. So make sure that your tire pressure is where it needs to be. Because when you just look at the tire, you won't be able to tell. But if you use this, and this isn't a very good one, it's kind of a cheapie. That's probably why I kept it in here. But it tells you your pounds per square inch. So write down PSI, pounds per square inch. Here's a good question. Let's see if you can answer it. Let's see who's going to be the smart one from class. The first one to answer it right. Bicycle tire, car tire. Which one has a higher PSI? Write it down. Let's see who can get that question right. So we'll see. Look for your lights, making sure no one has, damaged your lights. A lot of times when you're in a parking lot, people will just, for whatever reason, will damage your vehicle. So you're looking, did someone damage my lights? Did they take off my license plate? Do I have any fluids leaking around my vehicle? Because a lot of times, once you get out of your car and it starts to rest, a small leak will start to pool. And by looking at that fluid underneath your vehicle, you're going to be able to tell, is it gas? Is it oil? Is it antifreeze? Could it be brake fluid? Could it just be condensation from the air conditioner? But remember, the fluid is telling you something. So we're not going to make you a mechanic in this driver's ed class, but we are going to make you where you understand how to be a detective that something is not right with your vehicle and that you better be checking it out. Make sure no one's broken any windows and have gotten into the back of your car. This was on the news last night. I always watch the evening news right before I teach class. That's usually when I grab a bite to eat and relax for a few moments before I get here online. But I saw it last night on the news. I feel bad for the guy. Okay, keep guessing. I'm looking for the one that has the highest tire pressure. Sonia got it right. Carter got it right. James got it right. Karsten got it right. It is the bike tire. The bike tire has, just because the tire looks small, everybody thinks it doesn't have as much tire pressure. It has more than a car. See, now this is where you'd get in trouble if you went to a gas station and put air in your tires. You're probably thinking, well, I put 60 pounds per square inch in my mountain bike. I should probably put 60 on my car. That's where your mistake would be. Okay, so it's actually the bike tire. Someone broke into the back end of a vehicle in Massachusetts a couple days ago, and they stole a rookie card of Tom Brady. Now, I think we all know Tom Brady is a pretty popular football player, and this individual is a card collector, and he said that his cards that were stolen, there were a couple Tom Brady cards, were worth well over $200,000, and he had $400 in cash that they took. Make sure that your car is locked. Make sure that you don't have valuables where people can see them. That's why you're looking at your windows. Carjacking, very, very common. This was in the news in Washington, D.C. recently, where someone carjacked a Uber driver. Now, what is carjacking? Let me go to the next one. Carjacking, and always look out for animals and small children. Write that down. In cold weather, animals like to stay warm, so they're going to get into the tire walls right there and maybe up into the engine area. So just bang your car a couple times when you walk up to it. So if any animals are underneath, look for young kids, especially in the summertime, if they're on bicycles or playing in a driveway. If you've got younger siblings, be very careful about backing out of your driveway. I still can remember a story that I read in the paper of a musician that I had seen in concert. So I knew the guy. That's why I was reading the article. That his 17-year-old son ran over. They had adopted a young girl from China. I think she was 7 or 8 years old, and she was playing behind the vehicle. And he got into his car, and I don't know if he had his music on too loud or headphones on. He couldn't see or hear her when he backed out of the driveway too fast. I think she was, on the ground, maybe using chalk or something, and he killed his sister. He ran over his sister. So these stories do happen, and we don't want it to happen to you. So make sure you take the time to look around your vehicle. Back to carjacking. Carjacking is where someone takes a vehicle that is already running or is about to be entered into because you have your keys in your hand. The easiest car to steal is one that is running. Think about it. You don't have to hotwire it. You don't have to break a window. It's running. You just open the door and you take it. This is why it's so important to lock your doors the minute you get into a car, because you don't want people getting inside. So write this down. Carjacking happens a lot at stop signs, traffic lights, gas stations, and shopping centers. Those are hotbeds of where people, and like I said, in the news this week, an Uber, okay? And what does an Uber driver do? They pick you up, unlock the doors, they pick you up. Once you get inside the car, if you've got a weapon, you're going to take the car. You should always give up your car. If someone's got a knife or a gun pointing at your throat or your head, take my car. I want my life. Okay? But carjacking does happen. This was a situation in Georgia, I believe, where they took a car. And actually, it's kind of funny in the story. He wanted to take one car, and he chose to take a different one. I believe, this is only what I think, he looked to steal the car, and he realized it was a manual transmission. He didn't know how to drive it. So why take a car that you can't drive? So he had to go on to a different one. But here's the newscast. Here's the newscast on that story.
This noon, a developing story out of Kalamazoo County. One man is dead, another arrested for the shooting and carjacking. 24 Hour News 8's Tony Tagliavia is working this story. He's on the phone right now with new information. Tony?
Afternoon, Emily. Investigators tell us the victim has died. He's identified as a 47-year-old man from the Vicksburg area. Police say he was shot around 5:30 this morning at the Shell station in downtown Augusta when investigators say a man tried to take the car he was riding in. Police tell us the suspect then tried to take another car but failed and ran away. He ran on foot. Investigators caught up to him about a half-mile north of town. They were able to take him into custody. We talked with the Augusta police chief, who was among the law enforcement officers who took him into custody. He says he's glad they were able to take him in relatively soon after the shooting, but of course still sad to hear the news that the victim in this case has died. Police also...
So if someone wants to take your car, give it to them. Okay? Most of the time, they're looking for money. Some of the times they're looking to get somewhere. They actually want to drive somewhere. But most of the time they want your money or taking your car, and they're going to try to maybe strip it, the parts, to sell the parts. They're not going to keep your car and put it on the road and try to register it because they can't. It's stolen. So it's either a joyride, money, or they're going to strip it for parts. But just give it up. Just give it up. The other thing about looking around your vehicle, I found this kind of be interesting too. When I said look around your vehicle, you're looking underneath. You just never know. what could be underneath your car. That would be a little bit scary if you lived in Florida and you went to get into your car to go to school and Mr. Friendly Crocodile is underneath. And they move pretty fast. So keep an eye on what's happening around your car. Once you're inside your vehicle, I want you to write this down. You should lock your doors because we just got done talking about carjacking. Then you want to adjust your seat. And this is not a picture of my car. I have an electronic device that will move us forward, backwards, up, down. You should be extremely comfortable when you drive. You want to have a good bend to your legs to reach the pedals, and you want a slight bend to your elbow when you grab the steering wheel. And we'll talk about the steering wheel in a moment. Then you're going to lock the seat belts, and what I want you to write down your notes. Everyone in your car, you are the captain of your vehicle. When people get into your car, it's your rules. So you let your passengers know, if you don't wear your seatbelt, get out of my car. You're not riding with me if you don't have your seatbelt on. You are responsible for your passengers. If you're involved in a crash, you are responsible for their injuries. They won't have injuries as bad if they're in their seatbelt. I know of a case in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, where a girl picked up her best friend for school, and they were involved in a crash. And the friend sitting in the passenger seat didn't have her seatbelt on. This was before airbags. And the friend sued the driver. And her parents were really upset that she had all these medical bills. But it's their daughter that refused to put the seatbelt on. And they went to court to say it was the driver's responsibility to make their daughter wear her seatbelt. And they said that is indeed true. Okay, because the driver could have said, you can't get in the car, can't ride with me. So, not a good thing. Then adjust your mirrors. Rear view mirror is the most important one because you have a wider view. Adjust it so you can see out the back window. Side mirrors should be adjusted where you see just a small portion of the side of your vehicle. Now, I'm a traditionalist. I'm old school. I like to see a little bit of my car in my side mirror. It gives me a reference. I can see my car. I can see that van off to the side. But nowadays, they're changing what you see. Now, this is old school. This is me. You look in your rearview mirror, you see three vehicles. You look to the left, you see that white car. You look to the right, you see the car to the right. So it reinforces what you see. Now, a lot of people would say, well, aren't there 5 cars? No, there's only 3. We're doubling up on the far right, far left. So this is what it would look like if we were to do a diagram. So if you take a look at the orange, that is the left side mirror. If we take a look at the blue, it is the right side mirror. And you can see that there is a little bit of an overlap. There's a little bit of an overlap. So what they're recommending now for people to do, and I think this is a good thing to do once you get comfortable with driving. If you take a look at the picture right now, you no longer can see the cars in the side view mirror. Because what they're saying is once the car to the left or the car to the right starts to leave out of the rear view mirror, you are now going to see it move into the left side mirror or the right side mirror. Okay? And I understand that, and I think that's probably a good way to look at it. But to start off with, I kind of like to see, I see them, and I still see them in my side mirror, and I see my car. But if you like to go right to this type of method and you can see, okay, when we start working on lane changes, I'm cool with that too. I do not have a vehicle that has a car key to start it. And the state has asked me to limit what you touch in a vehicle. So you can touch the windshield wipers, you can touch the headlights, you can touch the steering wheel, you can touch the rear view mirror, the side view mirror, and the seat belt, and the door handle to get in and out. Everything else, I'm not really having you touch. I'm probably going to put the hazard lights on or deal with the air, things like that. But you should be familiar with starting a car with a key. You should be familiar with what is a transmission, standard transmission, what is a clutch. And I know I've got it listed for tonight, but I'm going to throw it into a different program night because I didn't want to get into that tonight. I want to finish up on this. Steering wheel, and then your accelerator and brake. And we said these are the only three things you can do in an automobile. You can brake, you can accelerate, and you can steer. So let's talk about the gears. Most of you know what park is for. We know what R is for reverse, and we know drive. But most of us kind of get hung up on why is there a neutral in a car and why is there a couple gears below drive. So let's talk about those. All right, so we know P is for park. That's where you're going to be when you start a car and when you end your drive with me. Reverse for going backwards. Neutral is really a position for towing if your car has to be towed. Or if it's a manual transmission, you put it in neutral to start it or to jump start it if the starter isn't working. You can roll the car freely when it's in neutral. So if the car can be pushed into neutral, you can actually push it down the road and move it out of a parking spot, even though you don't have a key. But you need a key, I should say, to get it into neutral. I didn't mean to say it that way. Low 1, low 2 is a lower form of drive, which means the car has more torque, more pulling power. You may use this to go up a hill if you're pulling a trailer, or if you're going up a hill and there's bad weather and you feel there's some slippage. Going to a lower drive gear is going to give more torque and pulling power to your car. But for the most part, we're going to be in reverse and drive mostly when we're out on the roadway. So there's the gear selector in my car, and it's kind of a funky pattern where you have to move it off to the right and then down to get into reverse, and then down 2 more notches for drive. And then I don't have an L1 or 2. I just have a B. It means the same thing. Today it came up in discussion, what is the best hand position? They really give you 3 options, 10 and 2, 9 and 3, 8 and 4. I'm not picky on how you grab the steering wheel as long as you're grabbing the outside of the wheel and you got both hands on the wheel. I am a firm believer when you're learning to drive, you have to be ready for any emergency, and you're always going to be better at handling emergencies with 2 hands than driving 1. Let me get this out of the way. Is it illegal to drive with 1 hand in New Hampshire? No, it's not. Okay, the way you grab a steering wheel is only a technique. It is not a law. I will tell you, if you go to YouTube, you could actually find videos of people that can drive with their feet, that can drive with their mouth. No lie. There are people that are quadriplegics, meaning they were involved in some type of a spinal cord situation where they lost control or use of their arms and their legs. They can equip your head and give you devices that you can put in your mouth that will help you accelerate, brake, and steer. Isn't that crazy? They have modified a van where you can actually drive with just your head. I mean, we saw last night automated cars. Now they probably don't even have to do that. They probably just put them in an automated vehicle. But grabbing a steering wheel is a technique of moving the car. You want to be smooth with your movement. I was telling someone today that if you are on the outside, standing on the side of the road, you could not look at a car, make a turn, and tell me they were grabbing the wheel at 8 and 4 or 10 and 2 or 9 and 3. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't. But you could tell someone that person took a turn too wide. They went over the yellow line, or they went into the soft shoulder. That was a bad turn. So if you're turning the wheel and your hands are all screwed up and you're doing funky things with your hands, change your hand position. That's probably related to why it was so bad. So I'm more concerned about how you make your turns than how you're gripping the wheel. So when you go for your driving test, I would use both hands on the wheel, but I don't think they care which position that you take. You can use 1 hand for backing up and reverse because you're going so slow. I like teaching hand over hand for most of my driving that I teach. Push-pull is good for like traffic circles and parking, and probably at speeds below 7 miles per hour. Push-pull is an adequate, and I'm talking about moving the steering wheel from the 9 o'clock position down to the 6, and then from 6 back up to 3. So you're kind of shuffling the wheel a little bit. I find that very effective at very low speeds. It's very relaxing, actually. We have airbags all over the vehicle. We'll spend a lot of time on Tuesday talking about airbags. I've had a couple of you use the tilt position, so make sure that you feel comfortable with where the steering wheel is. And then the horn. I will almost bet that nobody from this class will use the horn. It's amazing how many people think it's rude. Oh, I don't want to upset people. I don't want people to be upset at what I'm doing, so I don't want to really beat my horn. But you should. You should use it. So there's one hand backing. That's my wife. Here she's got both hands on the wheel. She's getting ready to do hand over hand. So she's making a left-hand turn, so that right hand's going to go from the 3 o'clock position to the 9 o'clock, and then the left hand's going to re-grip the wheel at 1 or 2 and finish off the turn. And then push-pull, she's at a 8 and 4 position, and she's going to shuffle the wheel from side to side. Foot position, always use your right foot for the accelerator or the brake. The left foot should be resting over on the dead pedal. That dead pedal is where you push against that little area, and it pushes your back up against the seat, and it keeps you more upright. So if you're taking a turn too quickly, if the airbag has to deploy, it's going to be a benefit that your body is squared up with the steering wheel and that you're not tilting or leaning in one particular direction. So keep your left foot on that dead pedal. So that's what it looks like in the driver's ed vehicle. And that cable back there is a cable that goes over to the brake pedal on my side. So my instructor brake is connected to your brake. Okay, here's some definitions. I will be testing you on this, so I want you to write these down. All right? Light acceleration, and I only write down the top definition. So light acceleration is slight pressure being applied to the pedal. It's really moving you from a stop position or at the beginning of turns. I gave the example of, well, how much pressure is light pressure? Well, if you had soaked a sponge in water, so you pulled it out of a bucket of water and no more water was coming out of it, and you were to put it on the ground, you know the minute you put your foot on it and start to squeeze, there's going to be some oozing out of water. So it's almost pushing it down ever so slightly to get a little bit of a stream of water. So that's going to create a smooth start. If you push down too much, it'd almost be like stepping on an egg. You'd break the egg. So if you jerk the vehicle, it's like breaking an egg that you're stepping on because you went too hard. Progressive acceleration is steady pressure on the gas pedal to get you to your desired speed. So you start out with light acceleration from a stop sign, and then you look at the speed limit, it says 35. So you're pushing down on the gas pedal now till you get to that point. Now be very careful because this does take some technique. If you continue to press down, guess what? Your speed's going to go up. Once you reach that desired speed, you have to know how to let go and maintain or push down ever so slightly if you're going up a hill to keep it at that 35. I will say that most of you have had a hard time, and granted it was your first time in the driver's ed vehicle, with keeping a good speed. There were some very high fluctuations. 7 above, 7 below. 8 above, 8 below. That's way too much. I'm more looking for 2 or 3 above, 2, 3 down below. That's going to keep you more accurate. But I saw way too many swings in the last couple days. So we've got to kind of bring it back. Next term, cover brake. This is when I know that someone's done a lot of driving. I know I ask you how many hours you've done with your parents, But the minute I watch you drive, the first 10 minutes, what you do with the brake pedal really gives me some idea of how experienced you really are. The way people use their brake pedal is a dead giveaway of their skill level. So cover brake is when you think something's going to happen. There's that anticipation, oh, the light's going to change. Oh, that pedestrian's going to walk out in front of me. So I see you're not using the brake, remember. You're not using it. You're just getting ready. So you're hovering over it. There is some time lost. When you go from the accelerated to the brake, you lose about a half of a second, 3/4 of a second. That doesn't sound like much, but that's going to translate into 10, 15 feet going through Durham. You may need that 10, 15 feet if someone's walking out in front of you. So a person that's anticipating gets that added benefit of stopping 10, 15 feet earlier. So that's how I can tell whether someone has been doing a lot of driving. When you're in heavy traffic, it's going to be on the brake, off the brake, on, off. So a lot of cover brake, a lot of coasting. Control braking is just right down regular braking. It's firm, steady pressure. It's what you normally do for your traffic lights and your stop signs. Now, the word pitch, when it says try not to have the vehicle pitch forward, well, you need it to pitch forward. You have to have a complete stop, but you want it to be ever so slight. And what a limousine stop is, and you can write this down, a limousine driver has been trained so they don't cause people that have hired them to have a problem in the back seat. Meaning, if you're carting people to the airport and they are having a business meeting, they've got their computer on their lap, or maybe they're eating at a wedding party, they don't want to make a mess or drop whatever they've got on their lap or in their hands. So making everything subtle is so important for a limousine driver. So a limousine stop is just before a traffic light or a stop sign. They're trying to stop about 10 feet from the line. And just as the car comes to a stop, they let go, and let me get out of here for a second. They let go of the brake pedal ever so slightly, and they cruise up that last 10 feet, and then you reapply the brake. So you get a lot of the heavy braking done just 10 feet before the stop line. Then you let go of the brake a little bit, and you go up that last 10 feet, and you just, like my body right now, it goes forward, then it comes back. So forward and back is what we call a resting stop. And when you go for your driver's test, they need to see a complete stop, a resting stop. Now, when the car comes to a complete stop, you should be looking for traffic. Left, right, left. 3 checks, all right? Left, right, left. You always look left first because that's where you're going to be struck from at an intersection. Anything that's going to hit you first will be coming from the left. Then you look to the right. Could be a bicyclist, could be a person running. Then you look left one last time to make sure that nothing has changed since your first check. Then you can go straight, you can turn left, you can turn right, but it's always left, right, left. Trail braking is when you're parking, backing up, inching forward in heavy traffic, beginning to make a turn from a stop position. The minute you let go of the brake, the car will start to move, unless you're on a very extremely steep hill. But if you're on level ground, the car is moving. A lot of people confuse, if I'm moving, I have to be on the gas pedal. No, you don't. If you want to move the vehicle, a lot of times it's your brake. And the other thing, I think I have it on the next slide. Let's see if this comes up. No, I know there's one more term. Threshold braking is maximum force on the brake pedal. So we're talking about emergencies. So write down threshold braking is used for emergencies. And I've always told people you cannot break the brake. Cannot break the brake. Which is kind of cool. So hit it as hard as you want. The car needs to stop as quickly as you want because you don't want to do damage to what is up in front of you. This is what I wanted you to write down and what I was going to talk about just a moment ago. We already said the first night of class, brake is the most important because it keeps you from going where you don't want to go. So we know the brake is super important. Both pedals need to be learned, meaning every new car you get into, the first 10 minutes is going to be a feeling out process. Okay, getting used to the brake, getting used to the accelerator until you go, oh, okay, I see how much pressure, how much give it's taking. And here's what I was talking about. Everybody thinks to go slower, you have to be on the brake. No, not necessarily. You could be on the gas pedal and make the car go slower. You let go of the gas pedal. So whatever you do opposite of what the pedal is intended to do, if you let go of that pedal, it will do the opposite of what it's intended to do. So when you push down on a gas pedal, you go faster. But if you want to go slower, let go of the pedal. When you want to stop, you push down on the brake pedal. But if you want to go faster, you let go of the brake pedal. So here's the experienced driver. He knows the difference between letting go of the accelerator to go slower and needing the brake pedal to go slower. That's an experienced driver. There's nothing more aggravating than being behind somebody that's constantly on their brake pedal, pushing every 2 or 3 seconds to go 3, 4, 5 miles per hour slower. He's got to learn, that person's got to learn how to regulate just with the gas pedal. And a parking brake keeps your vehicle from rolling backwards. This is the instrument panel. We've got a speedometer that's traditional, a dial off to the right. We've got a digital one in the middle. Any light that is on needs our attention. So we've got a red light because there's a seatbelt that's on. We've got a yellow light because at that point I needed an oil change. And a green light in a hybrid just means you're activating one of the hybrid gauges. Speedometer tells us how fast we're going. Odometer tracks the miles we've driven on that particular vehicle. Tripometer, it's kind of good to use maybe to track your gas mileage. That's how people usually use it. Or if they're doing a business trip and they got to bill somebody, they want to keep track of how many miles it was. Always check your gauge on fuel to see how much you have. Also on the gauge, it's going to give you a symbol indicating what side the gas pump needs to be in order to pump gas. I'll show you a funny video a little bit later of a woman who couldn't figure out what side her gas cap was on. And she kept on driving around the gas pump thinking it was going to change. And she just kept on keeping it on the wrong side of the car. It's pretty funny. Alternator, these three I want you to write down. Alternator, just write down electrical problem. So a lot of times when you have a gauge or a light that comes on, the car's not going to automatically just bust, down. It's not going to break down right off. It's going to give you just a few moments to think of about a safe place to pull over. So an alternator light deals with electrical, with the alternator or battery of your car. So when that starts to go, means electrical problem. Temperature gauge deals with your radiator, means your car is running too hot. There may be a leak in the radiator. Fluid could be leaking. So make sure that the temperature light isn't on or that the gauge isn't indicating that you're running hot. The one thing you do want to remember that if your engine is running hot, you could do damage to the engine. Try to get help as soon as possible. But the moment you know you're overheating, you should roll down your windows and turn your heater on high. You're trying to get the heat that's building up in the engine area into the passenger compartment of your vehicle. That will drop down the temperature gauge back towards the middle a little bit to get you off the road or towards a garage for a mechanic to take a look at. Brake warning light means there's a problem with the brakes. Makes sense, doesn't it? Could be a leak in the line. Oil pressure light means that there's not enough oil being circulated through the vehicle, so stop driving. This is very serious. Putting oil in a car is one of the simplest things to do. It's very simple, but most people don't read their owner's manual, and part of your homework will be doing a sheet that I'll put on the homework page as soon as we get done class. So go to the remote Facebook page and download your homework tonight. Actually, you're going to have a couple worksheets and some questions to answer. So make sure, and you can do it this weekend too, but use the half hour that I usually give you at the end. It would probably make more sense. Know what your lights are. Parking lights, seatbelt lights, ABS, high beams, day running lights, emergency flashes, all those things. You should have an idea where they're located on the inside, outside of your car, and what they're trying to communicate. I will tell you right now, there's at least a few of you that do not know what the color of your lights are and what they mean. All right? I will tell you right now, I know that you don't. And you should, because you've been watching people drive, okay, tentatively, probably for the last 5 years since you were, 10 or 11, knowing that you're getting close to the age of 16. You've been watching people drive, but yet you haven't remembered what brake lights and backup lights and parking lights, what color they are, where they're located. You're just too totally confused. So we're going to take a look at that. Make sure when we drive that you're comfortable. So right now we're going to be going, because of the temperatures fluctuation. Some days we may have the heat on, like today I had the heat on. A couple days ago I had the air conditioner on. So make sure that you're comfortable. We can make it where it's cooler on your side and warmer on mine if we have to. Haven't had the radio on with anybody yet, but once we start driving in around our third, fourth hour, and you're comfortable with the car and I get to see where you are as a driver, I don't mind having the radio on low. Most of the time I have it off, though. Phone, I try not to pick up my phone when people call me. Sometimes I do. It is connected to the Bluetooth, but I try not to speak on the phone while someone's driving. If we're stopped in a parking lot, I may pick up and talk. You should do the same. I try not to be on the road giving instruction while I'm talking on the phone. Sometimes I have an elderly father. He's had cancer and he's got a bad heart. So I will tell you right now, if I know I'm getting a call from my dad, I don't care who you are or where we're driving, I'm picking up. Because too many times in the recent months that his health has really gone down. So I'm going to be picking up and finding out what the story is. So I'll tell you that right off. But I'll try not to stay on the phone too long. The gas release and the trunk release is on the floor. For the hood is underneath the tilt control on the instrument panel, so you should be familiar with that. And maybe I'll pop the top and have you check for oil and know how to measure whether you've got enough oil in a car. Headlights are on your directional in the driver's ed vehicle. You have to spin it. There are 3 positions. You've got low, parking light, low beam, and automatic lights. Windshield wipers are to the right. You've got 3 positions. You've got intermittent, low, and high. Everything's on the down. Nothing is moved up. If you hit it up once, it just wipes once. But every car is slightly different, so you want to be somewhat familiar. On American cars, I find that you twist the end to activate the lights. In imports like Nissans, Toyotas, Hyundais, it's going to be moving a lever down. Oh, that's your homework. We're right near the end of class. There it is. So these symbols, I want you to go out into your vehicle at home, take out your car manual, and I want you to research and find out what all these symbols mean. Okay, so I've got a bank of symbols here. I've got a bank of symbols here. And I'm going to be posting these on the Facebook page in a moment. Okay, so let me get out of here for a second. My mouse isn't working quite so well. Let me go back to this. I'll put this back up. So these available times that I have coming up in the next couple days. So if people want to drive, make sure that you've texted me and let me know. I'll try to go through my messages a little bit later after I post on Facebook your homework. But that's just a basic rundown of the vehicle. I know in your reading you had a lot more, and they discussed a lot more of what's happening inside the car and some of the basic driving skills that you need to be a good driver. So that should sets the table for us to drive our first or second time out. Next week, we're going to be focusing on safety equipment. Then we're going to talk about rules of the road, about sign shapes, colors, symbols. We're going to be talking about right-of-way. And then I believe on Thursday, we've got, I'm trying to think because I don't have my sheet out. It could be turning. It could be turning. So that's going to be next week. Make sure those of you that haven't signed up to drive, please try to grab a time on Saturday. Those of you that have already driven, I'm going to give top priority. If no one else wants to take those times, then I'm going to start signing you guys up too, to get your second hour in, or maybe even some of you, maybe your third. So we'll try to move things along. If you have any questions about what we've covered in class, if you have any questions about your homework, please feel free to give me a text message. But this weekend is going to be heavy on your homework. So you got to download those worksheets. And I've got another worksheet that I want you to do where you're going to have to use your owner's manual and find out about tire size and oil requirements. And you're going to have to tell me about headlight numbers and fuses. This is just something you're going to have to talk with your parents too. So we're going to kind of cover that. We'll probably review a little bit on Tuesday. But I want to say thanks for hanging in there. I think most of you are stuck in. Let me take a look. See, we've got 22 people still on tonight. We're missing somebody. I'll have to find out who got out. But that's it. That's it for tonight. Thanks for hanging in there, and we'll get back at it Tuesday night at 7:30 if you're not scheduled to drive. And if you haven't paid, bring it to your next drive time. So that's it for tonight. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.